Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Ashley Minepa with Mac, and I'm super thrilled to have you join us for today's event titled Seven Factors to Consider Before Deciding the Right PAM Strategy for Your Enterprise, sponsored by ManageEngine, a division of Zoho. Before we get started, let me quickly go over a few housekeeping details. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A box and we'll do our best to answer them. Our sponsor, ManageEngine, has also provided some helpful resources for you. You'll find those on the right-hand side of your console under the Resources tab. Finally, today's webcast is also being recorded. Keep an eye out on your email for a link so you can rewatch the session or share with a colleague. And now, I'm super excited to announce our speaker for today, Ganesh Shalapa, a global head of support services at ManageEngine. Over to you, Ganesh.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. Um, Thanks, guys, for joining this webinar. As Ashley mentioned, my name is Ganesh. I'm the global head of support services team here at ManageEngine. I've been with ManageEngine for the past 18 years. So today's webinar is going to be about 7 factors to consider before deciding the right PAM strategy for your enterprise. So we will be talking a little bit about identity and access management, what they are, what are the different pieces that comprises the overall IAM strategy, and we'll talk about PAM and what role does PAM play in the overall identity and access management strategy. And if you are looking to join the PAM journey, what are the critical factors that you should consider before deciding on the right PAM system for you? And finally, we'll also talk a little bit about who we are and what we do and what kind of offerings that we have. So that being said, if you look at identity and access management, it's a huge area of enterprise IT, right? There are a lot of fragments into IAM. For example, you have identity lifecycle management, authentication, authorization, and audit. You have IGA, PAM, ITDR, and also identity analytics and business intelligence. So if you look at these fragments, they all have their own set of unique capabilities and functionalities that will help you in tackling various challenges that you might be having in your infrastructure. But if you look at the solutions that are available in the market today, there is no single IAM solution because these fragments are in its own quite big in nature with a lot of functionalities and capabilities required. So finding a single vendor who can actually provide a true IAM solution is very, very difficult, although it's really convenient if we can find one. But to be honest, all the vendors in the market today provide certain fragments of this IAM not all in one. And like I said, the reason is because it's highly challenging to find a single vendor because of the breadth and depth of capabilities required in each one of those identity and access verticals, different industries and sectors, businesses of varying sizes. Challenging to have one seamless IAM solution that can tackle all the requirements. And at least that is the reality of it today. But PAM plays a huge role in IAM fragments that we talked about. You probably already have your own universal directory. You might already have an authentication and authorization system in place. You might also have some level of SIM or UEBA solutions for business intelligence and advanced analytics. But when it comes to PAM, privilege access management, it acts as the first and last line of defense for your enterprise. And the reason I say it to be the first and last line is because the core objective of privilege access management solution is to discover all of your privilege identities and also to ensure that you don't have any unwanted identities in your infrastructure. And just to put that into perspective, 77% of CISOs have experienced an identity security attack in the last 1 year. And according to the IDSA report, 90% of organizations have also experienced identity related incident in the past 1 year. And if you guys look at the Verizon's like 2023 data breach investigation report, that says 86% of data breaches involve stolen credentials. And finally, 74% of all data breaches involve human element, meaning somebody had accidentally clicked on a phishing link or fallen for a smishing attack, or somehow they have been compromised, their identity have been compromised, which is why privileged identities are a huge part when it comes to cyber security and also in reducing the attack surface. And privileged access management does just that. And that is why I mention it to be the first line of defense. And the reason I say it to be the last line of defense is because it's really difficult to ensure that not a single user in your enterprise do not fall for a phishing attack, right? So at some point, there's going to be somebody who does click on that malicious link or accidentally download that infected PDF file or an attachment file. So what happens then? Now, if you do have a proper PAM strategy and a system in place, despite this compromise, you can silo that entire attack into that one single entry point. There won't be any lateral access. You don't have to worry about this penetration, exposing your domain controller or your critical infrastructure. And PAM does exactly that. It works on zero standing privilege principle. It means the users will not have full blown administrative access all day long. Like if you think about it, you might have a handful of users who are part of a domain administrative group today, or some of them might have local admin permissions on some machines today, or network admin rights or Linux administrative rights. But if you think about it, do they really need these privileges when they are sleeping? Do they really need these privileges when they are on leave, when they are on vacation, when they are out traveling? They don't need it. They need these privileges right when they are trying to accomplish an activity, right? So having a solution like PAM will help you bring in that just-in-time elevation capability where no user will have full-on standing privileges. The system will ensure that just when there is a requirement, the user will be provided with an elevated permission just for the amount of time they will need it. Like if somebody have to do a patching work and that's going to take about 30 minutes, PAM system can provide access to that user precisely for the 30 minutes and then demote that user's privilege, regardless of what kind of identity they are using. They might be using their own domain account, or they might be using an ephemeral account temporarily created in that system, for example. But regardless, you have to ensure that you use just-in-time elevation or self-service elevation capabilities where users don't have zero standing privileges. And another benefit of having a PAM strategy and a system in place is that it acts as a compliance enabler. Some of you might be preparing for PCI audit or ISO audit or NERC audit. And these audit requirements are very, very specific about how exactly you should design your infrastructure and what are the things you should have in place in order for you to comply with those standards. And having a PAM system means that it will not only help you um, comply with those requirements, it will also provide the necessary audits. Like you would be able to generate a PCI or a ISO report out of the box and submit it to your auditor and get through the compliance audit quite easily. And then finally, when it comes to any system for that matter, when it comes to implementation of any system, it boils down to user adoption, right? You might have hundreds of users in your organization who may need access to go to different places for doing different activities all day long. Now, unless you have a system that offers the level of security without compromising the convenience factor, you are going to have a real hard time in, having the users actually leverage these systems that you are investing and deploying. So PAM solutions can actually provide a convenient way for your users to gain privileged access. Like typically, if somebody wants to go to a DNS server or a domain controller, they would have to manually run the remote desktop application, supply the credentials, and connect to it. Whereas if you have a PAM system in place, they just look for a device, click on connect button. They don't even need to know any usernames and passwords or keys or certificates without any form of credential. being exposed to them, you can provide them with access to the target machines. And by doing that, you ensure that they don't have direct access to the systems. They also don't have the actual passwords or keys or tokens in plain text. So on one sense, this provides all the security you need for your organization. But from the other perspective, it makes the user's life easier. They just look for a machine, click on connect, and do their activity without having to, run three different commands, navigate to five different places, and then gain privilege access. So that is another factor when it comes to a privilege access management system. So with that said, um, if you are actually looking for a privilege access management system or looking to begin your PAM journey and you're thinking of a strategy like what should I invest in or how should I approach this entire privilege access control, I would be happy to suggest you 7 key factors that you need to look at before you decide on your PAM strategy. So the first absolute essential factor is to understand your current maturity level when it comes to privilege access management. So you have to take stock of what tools you currently have, what capabilities you currently have, so that you can decide on the maturity level of your current PAM strategy and then move forward from there. And how do you do that? Like, how do you determine where do you stand when it comes to privilege access management? So to make it easier, I have broken down the PAM maturity levels into 3 categories. So essential, evolutionary, and enhanced. So as the name suggests, essential capabilities are absolutely essential for every organization, regardless of your business, regardless of your vertical, regardless of your organization's size. You're going to need at least most of the essential capabilities that are listed in this slide deck. So beginning with account governance. Account governance is the capability that allows you to automatically discover all privileged identities across your entire IT infrastructure. You might have Windows machines, Linux machines, network devices like switches, routers, firewalls, databases like Microsoft SQL, Oracle, even cloud applications or cloud accounts. So the point is you need to have a PAM system that can automatically discover these accounts and identities and help you consolidate them and do some cleanup activity. I mean, let's be real. You might have one user who used to work for your organization 4 or 5 years ago. They no longer work for your organization, but during that tenure, they have created local accounts on so many places. Now, because these are not like a unified directory account or a SAML account, it's really hard for you to know where these accounts are. Like if a guy named Ganesh used to work for your company and he created an account on a firewall in a database in a Linux server, how would you even know such accounts exist in your environment today? So that is why you need privileged account governance module or capability. It's highly important because you really need to know how many privileged identities you have in your environment at any given point of time. In fact, if you go for some of the audits, the auditor will directly ask you this question, like, do you guys know how many privileged identities do you have in your organization? You need to be able to give them an accurate number or at least a ballpark number, because in most organizations as of today, if you ask them this question, the answer would be like anywhere between 50 to 5,000. Like that's a big range, right? So you have to be able to consolidate, do some cleanup, and get a reasonable privilege identity count so that your attack surface will be reduced. And then fine-grained access control is where not everybody need access to every area of your enterprise IT. So you need to have fine-grained access control where specific users can only connect to specific devices. Like for example, if you have a network engineer, he's probably going to need access only to switches, routers, firewalls, and load balancers. And even to those devices, you need to have access control in place where they put a request, get the right approvals from the network administrators, and only then they gain that access. And then secure remote access is what we talked about earlier, where you provision a way for the users to directly take a remote access, connect to these devices, and do their activities without having to, manually handle credentials, passwords, keys, or tokens. And by provisioning them remote access, you also get the benefit of recording their activities and also monitoring the sessions. Sometimes it's not just your internal users, right? You might have some external consultant or a vendor who needs access to one of your internal servers. And when you give them access, you should be able to monitor what they are actually doing in that particular endpoint that you have provisioned for them. So that would be monitoring and recording. And certificate lifecycle management is where you have a PAM system that can automatically discover your SSL and TLS certificate, remind you before they expire, and totally manage it for you. And then finally, compliance reporting, we just touched upon it. Like you could be going for PCI, ISO, NERC, or if you have um, offices or sites not only in the United States but also in EU region, in Europe, you will have to probably prepare for NIS2 or Essential 8 or GDPR. So for all of these compliance standards and regulatory requirements, you will need a PAM solution to be able to comply with them and also to furnish the necessary evidence in the form of reports. So if you have most of them or at least some of them, you can consider yourself to be in the essential maturity level. Then comes evolutionary. This is where you have a dedicated module for vendor access management. You might have external vendors who need access to your internal system. This is where you have application level control or command level control. Like when you do provision access, you don't give them full on local admin or domain admin. Like think about it. If you have a DBA, their activities and day-to-day operations will comprise of executing Microsoft SQL Studio or Oracle Developer Tool or Todd or DBweaver or some kind of a database administrative tool is what they are probably going to use. They don't need admin access to the Windows server where the database instance is running. They don't need access to the control panel to uninstall or install anything in the boxes. So application and command control is where you provision specific tools to these users, allow them to use only those set of tools with the right permission. Like instead of full on domain admin, the DBA will execute these tools with a DBA account. So it doesn't necessarily have more privileges than what is necessary for them to do their day-to-day operations. And then contextual integration. You need to have your PAM solution seamlessly integrate with various other systems in your infrastructure as well. So if you can have these capabilities, then you can consider yourself in the evolutionary level. And enhanced would be for predominantly medium to large size organizations. This is where you're probably running your infrastructure in a hybrid model where you have some on-prem servers and virtual machine, but you also have Azure or AWS where you have some virtual machines, guests, and your IT environment basically. So in this case, not only do you have to deal with privilege identities and access of on-prem infrastructure, but you also have to deal with the cloud infrastructure, those identities, the services they are attached to, the permissions they have in those services. You have to certify them, review them, and revoke access if it's not used for a considerable amount of time. And then machine identity management is all about non-human access like APIs, authentication tokens, credentials that are hard-coded in places, service accounts, that sort of thing. And then privileged task automation is where you go one step further. You can fully automate certain activities that are manually performed in your organization today. Imagine you have a data analyst and they are shipping a set of logs every day from point A to point B. And every day they are doing it day in, day out. Like they have to copy a set of logs from server A to server B and they do it at the exact same time every day. Now, in order to do that, they need access to server A, they need access to server B, and then they have to remember to do it every day. Now, if you have a task automation engine, you can literally have the engine do this entire activity. You can set up the system and the workflow where the system will automatically do the log shipping without manual intervention. That is one example, but you could achieve a lot of use cases. Like every time somebody leaves your organization, how are you going to revoke access for this user from network devices or databases or any other standalone device that you might have in your infrastructure? Or you might be from a manufacturing industry, you might have OT environments and you're looking at revoking access from ICS or SCADA type devices. So a task automation engine will be really helpful in achieving those kinds of complex requirements as well. And that would be If you have those capabilities, then you can consider yourself in the enhanced maturity level when it comes to privilege access management. So with that information in mind, if you're looking at your screen, you're probably looking at a poll question where it says, what maturity level are you in your PAM journey? Feel free to select the options. You can see yet to start. If you don't have even the essential capabilities, A would be the answer. Or you might fall under essential, evolutionary, or enhanced uh, maturity level. Obviously, this would knowing this would help you prepare for your PAM journey. And the next point that you really need to consider is your existing identity ecosystem. We talked about it in the first slide deck about how IAM has different fragments like IGA, AAA, and all of it. So if you already have a universal directory, if you already have a multi-factor authentication system, if you already have a SIM solution, then you need to think about those tools and make sure that the PAM system that you are investing in can seamlessly integrate with your other IAM fragments. Because like I said, there's no single IAM all-in-one solution as of today in the market, right? So it's really important for the PAM to be able to integrate with other IAM components. And beyond IAM, you might have an extended ecosystem. You might have a unified service management system like Service Desk Plus or ServiceNow or Jira or BMZ Remedy. That's where all of your activities predominantly happen: request, workflows, change management, and all of it. You might have an observability solution that you use for monitoring your infrastructure, a full stack observability solution. Now, a PAM solution should integrate with these systems as well, because these systems, from time to time, need privilege access. How are you going to provision it to them? What happens when a password is changed and your monitoring solution can no longer monitor? So that is why you have to take a stock of your current IT ecosystem, like what kind of tools and solutions you already have in your broader enterprise IT area. And the fourth point is you have to really focus on non-human identities. So human identities is one thing. Most cases it's named account. If I'm Ganesh, my organization probably have provided me with a domain account called Ganesh, and my account, even though it's a standard user, will be elevated as a local admin or a domain admin or a network admin as and when I have a need for it. And that's perfect. But what if it's not a named account? What if it's a service account? What if it's an application's authentication token? What if it's a certificate or an SSH key or a PGP key, for example? Then what happens? Who owns them? Like, if you think about it, that is a secret that owned by your organization. Your entire organization is responsible for it because it's not named after one individual and it's not provisioned to one user. So you need to take stock of such non-human identities like TLS certificates, API tokens, anywhere you have a hard-coded credential, anything from a simple batch file or a PowerShell script or a cron job to third-party applications where you have some credentials embedded. These days, you have AI agents, right? So AI agents also use tokens and it uses high privileges sometimes to perform their activities like natural language processing. If you want to chat with it and ask some questions and get really useful answers, then that agent is going to need some really powerful privileges, right? So how do you tackle that? Like, how do you control it? How do you make sure your AI agent don't go overboard in just scrolling every data and just learning and just not having any control? Like, I might be an intern, and if I ask an AI agent a question like, what's the revenue for this month? And if it gives me the answer, that's a problem, because that type of an answer should probably be divulged only to the leadership team, right? But because the AI agent is the same agent, you have these kinds of complexities and bridges and like boundaries. So you also have to think about it when you invest in a PAM system or when you are looking for a PAM strategy to implement. And then the next factor you really need to yeah, I mean, how many of you guys know that the Certificate Authority Consortium have are looking to reduce the certificate life cycle to like 47 days? Like earlier, it used to be 1 year. Now, if you go out and procure a certificate from like GoDaddy or DigiCert or VeriSign now, I think you can only get a certificate for 1 year, but eventually it will come down to 47 days. What that means is like every 47 days, you have to renew your certificates. And certificates are a challenge because you have to remember to renew it and also deploy it in all the places where that certificate is used, right? So that's this whole question about, are you guys aware of this 47-day certificate mandate? And if you do know, are you prepared for it? Like, how are you going to automate it where you have a system that can automatically generate a new certificate or renew the existing certificate and deploy it to all the places, like your load balancer, your database, anywhere you have a certificate, your IIS web server or a Tomcat or Apache web server. In all those places, a system has to go out and revoke and renew the certificate and deploy it. Otherwise, you're looking at applications going down, databases not starting, and all of it. So that's the poll question. Feel free to answer it as well. So we will see at the end of the webinar about the posture. And the next factor you really need to take stock into is your external vendors. So internal users, they're fairly straightforward. Like I said, you probably already have a universal directory like Active Directory or Entra ID or Okta or any directory system. What about your third-party vendors? Like, you can't really create an Entra ID account for a third-party vendor because they don't work for your organization, and you have consultants who work for only a few days in an entire year just to offer some services. So how do you provision access to them? So you really need to have the list of vendors, the external vendors and consultants and third-party contractors as and when they appear. And also you need to know the frequency of how often they might need access to your infrastructure. Like I said, there might be a vendor who needs access every day. There might be another vendor who needs access once a year. But a system like PAM should be able to handle both of these scenarios. Like, there should be a self-service model where vendors can auto-register themselves, request access, get the right approvals from your organization's lead, and then move forward. It shouldn't be a manual process where you remember to share and then remember to revoke access, because that's going to be human errors for sure. So that would be point number 5. And point number 6 is any PAM system you are investing in and you're looking to deploy should be highly available, highly scalable, and it should be future ready. Because think about it, this solution is going to be like a key to your entire kingdom, right? So if it's not highly available and if you don't have the ability to scale it for future, and if it's not future ready in the sense like uh, think about PCQ, like post quantum cryptography. Like, as of today, most systems use AES 256 and they use RSA algorithm or DSA sometimes. But the point is, if we do see quantum computers rising up, there's a good chance that it might be able to break our traditional AES encryption, right? So if you're investing in a PAM solution or a vendor, you need to take stock of what are their future plans when it comes to PQC. That is just an example. Um, and when it comes to scalability, today you might have 500 users, but moving forward in future, it will exponentially grow. And along with it, the system should also scale. You shouldn't have to invest further to scale your existing platform that you have already paid for. So that is a crucial point that you really need to consider. And then finally, you have to think about the implementation timelines, because if you look at privilege access management, it's one of a complex piece of softwares or systems in place, to be honest. So most of the vendors that offer privilege access management, if you look at the timelines, the deployment timeline is like anywhere between 6 months to a year. And even after a year, if you look at it, you're probably leveraging only 60% of the capabilities offered by that system. So the PAM strategy you're looking at, the PAM vendor you're looking to prefer or select, they should be able to provide a system that is portable, that is user friendly, and that is easy to deploy. Because otherwise, it's just going to be a huge monthly project where you do a back and forth, and it just multiplies the complexity rather than solve your existing challenges. So These are the 7 factors that you really need to take into consideration if you are looking for a PAM solution or if you're looking to invest in a PAM solution. That being said, in ManageEngine, we have these 4 products in our PAM suite. Um, we started our journey in like 2007. So that's when we built our first PAM point product. That's the year I joined ManageEngine as well. So that's like 18 years ago. To be honest, at that time we were about 300 odd employees, and as we were growing, we were in need of a secret vault, because just like any small organization, we were storing our passwords in like Excel sheets and putting it in like shared drives. Didn't really work out for us as we were growing in number. So we really started to build a solution for our own consumption. That's where our journey began. And you can see as we progressed, we realized like these capabilities will be really helpful for our own organization. And then we realized not only for us, this is a really good solution even for other users and our customers. And that is how our journey began. And that's where we are now in 2025. We have cloud infrastructure management, privilege session management module, and all of it. So if you look at these 4 products, password manager is for, I would say, essential maturity level. If you're a small or a medium business with no PAM maturity level, you're just starting your PAM journey, password manager would be the right solution. Key manager is for Linux shops predominantly and for certificate lifecycle management that we talked about. Access manager is purely for just dealing with remote access. And PAM 360 is our platform. It combines the other 3 products and also offers much more advanced capabilities, like all the integrations that we talked about, not just with IAM systems, but also with other enterprise IT solutions that you might have in your infrastructure. And so the challenge that we talked about earlier, like, is there a single IAM vendor? And some of you might have heard about CyberArk being acquired by Palo Alto. It's a pretty big news because 26 billion is a pretty big number. But if you look at some of these vendors like CyberArk, Beyond Trust, or even if you take Okta or any vendor who plays in the IAM category, they only have a handful of capabilities or fragments that we talked about. So ManageEngine's vision is to be the first vendor, hopefully, to have a seamless IAM platform. So we had about 12 different products doing these different fragments, and we have unified them. And as of today, we have it as 3 platforms. PAM 360 is our privilege access management platform. AD 360 is our universal directory and our IGA solution. Identity 360 is our cloud-driven unified IAM platform. So eventually, we will combine these 3 into this Identity 360 platform, which will be our seamless IAM 360 solution. At least that is our vision, that is our goal, that is what we are working towards to achieving. Hopefully, we'll be the first vendor to actually do that. But if you look at this diagram, you will clearly see all the real use cases or functionalities that you actually need to be fully prepared for a IAM. IAM, like fully covered for your identity and access management needs, to be honest. And with that said, we are Zoho Corporation. That's our company name. And ManageEngine is the division where we build enterprise IT solutions. So you can see all the products that we have and all the platforms that we have. So we usually begin um, doing R&D in a particular product, offer it as a point product, and then eventually, because we are also building frameworks and application layer on top of it, we also have it as 6 different platforms today: service management, identity and access management, full stack observability, endpoint management, and also SIM and UEBA solutions. So if you guys have any need for any of these solutions, or if you're facing any challenges, you can always reach out to us and we'll be happy to help you out. So with that said, we can see the poll answers. So 60% of you guys have said like you're yet to start the PAM journey. So yeah, I mean, like I said, you could start with Password Manager and then eventually mature to PAM 360, or you can look at PAM 360 platform because all the capabilities that we talked about, they are just like touch, like it's just the tip of the iceberg. There's still more to it. But yeah, it's good to know. Then the next poll question. Yep. So 30% of you have mentioned that yes, you guys are aware of the 47-day certificate mandate and you are prepared for it. Probably you already have a system in place to tackle this certificate management. But 70% of you guys have mentioned that no, you're not prepared for it. So PAM solution can actually help you with that. Um, it has a dedicated certificate lifecycle management module where it can automatically discover your certificates, sends you an alert before they expire, renew them, and deploy them automatically. So end-to-end lifecycle of your certificates can be managed using PAM 360. So that's pretty much what I had in mind for today's session. Thank you so much for joining. If you guys have any questions, you can always post it in the Q&A box. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. All right, I see. Can this solution be deployed in a hybrid environment? Yes, you can. Although our solution is designed to be an on-premise software, we also support both on-prem implementation and a hybrid implementation where you have probably one node of it running in on-prem, um, and then you have another node running in your cloud server. It could be Azure or AWS. In fact, our solution is also listed in AWS and Azure marketplaces. So it would also work well for your availability and scalability factors, right? So you have one node running on-prem, another node running on cloud. So if something were to happen to your on-prem infrastructure, your users will be automatically redirected to the node running on cloud, and they would still be able to get to their passwords and do their activities. The next question is, how long does it take to deploy your PAM solution? So it varies depending upon your organization's um, strength. But to be honest, even our largest deployment doesn't take more than 60 days. Like even if you're a large enterprise with like anywhere between like 3,000 to 5,000 end users, even then we are looking at only like 2 months as the implementation timeline because we've kept the simplicity and the user friendliness of this product. So even though we've updated the technology, but if you look at the structure, the way it's designed, we have kept the same simplicity from 2007 till today. And because of that, it's very seamless, it's portable, it's lightweight, and more importantly, it's very, very intuitive and user friendly. You won't have a problem when it comes to the deployment of the solution and user adoption because it doesn't require a lot of learning curve. You don't need to train your users, just give them access and they would be able to figure out and just start using the tool out of the box. And even from a deployment perspective, for you, there's not a lot of effort involved in deploying the solution. If you just think about the 7 factors we talked about in this session, I think you're all set for deploying the solution. And like I said, we'll be more than happy to get it deployed for you in less than 60 days. Um, and then what are the prerequisites required? Like, yeah, I mean, from an infrastructure perspective, just a couple of VMs where we can install and configure the system, then onboard your users, discover your endpoints and all of it. So from a prerequisites perspective as well, there's not a lot. Like you don't need to purchase your own database or a web server or any component. Like our solution comes bundled with all the prerequisites and components required or necessary for it to function. So it's just a matter of downloading the binary, installing it, and start configuring it out of the box. So there aren't many prerequisites required. Just the virtual machines for deploying the app server with the DB embedded into it. We use a tailored version of database, and we use dual layers of AES 256-bit encryption. That should cover your needs. For an enterprise operating across multiple public clouds, what is the best approach? A single centralized PAM platform or using the cloud provider's native identity services? That's a really great question. But if you think about it, um, multiple public clouds as well, they even among multiple cloud platforms, they behave very different way, right? So for example, Entra ID works very different from AWS or GCP, and the way they provision access, the security policies, the access certification, they all vary. So I would suggest you to look at a centralized PAM solution, because not only are you handling both on-prem and cloud identities under a single platform, even in cloud, you are able to handle multiple cloud identity providers under a single platform. So you need to have cloud infrastructure entitlement management capability where you're able to discover these identities, be it Entra ID or AWS. You should be able to discover them, check the risks associated with them. Like if somebody hasn't used your cloud infrastructure for 45 days, they don't need an IAM service permission for their identity, right? So CIEM is absolutely essential, and having it centralized is key because regulatory standards and compliance requirements are growing exponentially. If you don't have it centralized, you're basically looking at generating three different reports from three different cloud providers that is going to look three different ways, and you're going to have a hard time combining them. Or like you just have to submit as three different reports to your audits, and that's going to be a real pain. Which is why I would suggest you to look for a centralized PAM that can deal with both on-prem and cloud. And in cloud, it's supposed to deal with multiple public cloud providers. Let's see, any other questions? All right, I don't see any further questions. But yeah, if you guys think of any questions, you can always reach out to us. You can see our email ID there, pam@manageengine.com. Just drop us an email if you're looking to have a quick demonstration of our product, or if you have specific scenarios or use cases for which you're trying to solve that particular scenario. We'll be more than happy to help you out. We also have a 30 days trial version of our solution, and we offer free technical support during your evaluation. So we'll be more than happy to provision a demo, set up a proof of concept for you so you can try the solution for a month, see how it works before you decide whether our PAM 360 solution would be the right fit for your organization. So that's it. Thank you so much for patiently listening to me, guys. Hopefully, the session was informative. I'll hand over the session to Ashley.
Thank you, Ganesh, for that excellent presentation. And well, folks, that's all the time we have for today. If we didn't get to your question, or if you still have one, please type it in the console now, and we'll make sure it gets over to the Manage Engine team. A big thank you to all of you for joining us. And of course, a special thanks to Manage Engine, a division of Zoho, for sponsoring today's event presented by Redmond Mac. Thanks again for being with us, and we wish you a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.